All right, welcome everybody for coming to my talk, The Flexibility of Drupal 8. It's been a fun camp so far.
My rankings are, can I say hi?
Yes.
Rankings are online, they are gonna go to the Northern Lights tonight. So rankings are online in /NLights if you wanna join, and there's gonna come more information later.
I just remembered I forgot to pay for yesterday's.
That's also online if you need to pay for yesterday's. Otherwise, don't be nicer. So sorry.
No problem, not at all. Yeah, I have a picture of the Northern Lights
questions.
here from when last time I was in Iceland, but it will look better in person than on this washed out screen.
Don't stay there for a second.
Stay here. You want me to do this? I'm actually doing something.
Wow, nice. Good.
Okay, so the flexibility of Drupal 8. First of all, let me just introduce myself. I'm Mike Miles from Boston, Massachusetts in the U.S. The northeast part of the U.S., which I should be used to snow like this, but it's been really warm in New England, so I'm happy for the snow, actually. One of not that many people, I'm sure. I've been working with Drupal since 2008, doing everything under the sun with Drupal. I run the Boston Drupal meetup, so if you're ever in town, look us up, first Tuesday of the month. So I build modules, implement websites. I am the associate director of PHP for a digital agency called Genuine. So I do large-scale architecture of Drupal projects. Genuine does way more than Drupal. We do way more than development, but my team focuses mainly 99% on building with Drupal. I'm also the host of a podcast called Developing Up, where we talk about the non-technical side of being a developer. So if you've listened to us, thank you for listening. If you haven't, check it out. We talk about things like coming up with career goals or how to ask for help was the latest episode. So helpful things you don't learn as a developer. But if you want to learn more about me, anywhere on the internet, I am Mike Miles 86, Twitter, Slack, Drupal.org, etc. So flexibility is what I'm talking about today. In the first couple times I gave this talk, I didn't really define flexibility. I let the audience determine what it meant. I wanted to come up with I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page with what I mean by flexibility. So I actually did some reading and some research. This great paper titled Types of Flexibilities and Classification of Flexible Manufacturing Systems. This was a paper written in 1984 by Jim Brown for the University of Michigan, actually studying the types of mechanical systems that the automotive industry used and how those were flexible. And in his paper, him and his researchers came up with 8 types of flexibility. And one of them is described as expansion flexibility, which is the capability of building a system and expanding it as needed easily and modularly. The big word there is modular. But reading this, it made me think of Drupal. And what really struck me was that a term to define the flexibility of a physical system in 1984 could be applied to a digital system in 2017, which is really cool. But what this means for Drupal and what makes Drupal flexible is first and foremost its modular design. Most of us are probably aware Drupal relies on the use of modules in collection of functionality that is independent from others, that you can swap in and out to make Drupal fit your needs. Drupal 8 especially also depends on decoupled systems. We have the service layer, thanks to the Symfony framework, and they try to be separate from each other so you can swap them in and out. Underlying core functionality like the database or email or the entity system. So APIs, plugins, and services. And then, of course, Drupal is open source, which makes it really collaborative and flexible, where if Drupal doesn't do what you need it to, you can build a module and put it out there for others to use, or you can get functionality from others, and you don't have to build it all yourself. So it's very flexible in that way because of the open source nature. Now, not only is Drupal flexible, but Drupal developers and Drupalists, or Drupalistas, however you want to call us, or the community, we're also very flexible. And so I came up with this diagram that I called the Drupal brain. And this is not every Drupalist has all these skill sets, but I think these are the different skill sets that make up Drupalists. If you want this diagram, I put a bit.ly link. Feel free to share it out. Drupal brain. But we have to know a little bit PHP development. We know a little JavaScript, a little CSS, site building, and then my favorite Drupalisms, like the terms, what things mean in Drupal. So every time we work with Drupal, we're thinking of these different things. Maybe some of us know PHP, some of us know CSS. You don't have to know all this, but these different skill sets are what allow Drupal to be as flexible as it is, and your team who works with Drupal to be as flexible as they are. And this is important because It means using these different skill sets, using the open source nature of Drupal, you can make Drupal do what you want. No matter what the challenge is, you can make Drupal do it. And I say that because when you come up with a problem or a client has an ask, you don't have to sit there and think, all right, what's the right way to do this in Drupal? All you have to think about is what is the right way for me to do this in Drupal? Based on your skill sets from the Drupal brain, the time you have, your budget requirements, all these impact how you're going to build a solution. And Drupal is flexible enough where no matter where these lie, the time, the budget, the skills, you can come up with a solution that works to meet your client's needs, which means you come up with the right way to solve that problem. Because that's the underlying point, is to solve a client's needs. Now, let's say along comes a client and they give you a very specific set of development guidelines, as they always do. Such as, could you change the menu things on the homepage? Right? Very specific about what they want you to do. You can sit there and think about what skills, what time, what budget, what does the client mean when they want me to do this? So let's say this is that website where they want you to change the menu thingies on the homepage. This is what the client says. This is a pretty much stock Drupal 8 site. We have these tabs up at the top. That's our main menu with the thingies in it. Focus of this session, what I want to do for the rest of this time, is I'm going to prove the flexibility of Drupal and a Drupal team. And I'm going to do so by demonstrating all the different skill sets that we talked about and all the different ways that Drupal 8 allows you to make it do what you want. And I'll talk about some of the considerations and limitations. So what I'm actually going to do is we are going to change these menu tabs using 8 different methods in Drupal. 8 different skill sets from non-technical to very technical. I had to take out the last one for time, but you'll see that no matter what skills you have, you can make Drupal do something the right way for you. So the first one I want to talk about is Drupal core, or what I like to call the pushing buttons method. This is really simple, or relatively easy, especially in Drupal 8. You can edit the menu. Like you just have to have some site builder skills, know the Drupalisms, and you can edit a menu tab, change the title, really quickly and easily. You don't need to know how to do development. You just need to know where to go on Drupal. Your clients can do this themselves if they're willing to do it. And it's kind of off center on this. Sorry about that. But the menu title is changed. It has alt at the end. Sorry, you can't see that. Now that's very quick and easy. Of course, you're limited to what Drupal core has in the box. It's not everything to everybody because it's trying to be flexible. But that's where modules come in. Drupal is built on top of having modules that you can easily find, download, and extend into your Drupal website. As of today, there are over 30,000 modules available on Drupal.org. So if you have to do something, there's probably a module out there that does it for you to some degree. Same thing with this client ask. There's the menu link attributes module, which allows you to add additional HTML attributes to a menu tab. So we can download and install this into our Drupal site. We can use Drush, we use Console, we can use Composer to install a module. We just enable it on our website. And then what we can go ahead and do is when we go and use Drupal core to edit our main menu, because we've added a module that extends our Drupal functionality, we can edit the title using core. And then we have this new attributes section. We've extended Drupal, we've flexed it to meet our needs, and we can add these a CSS or a class or a target, or we can add our own attributes. And so this is a little bit of YAML. I don't know why that picture up there. Sorry. And we can add to this YAML lines 11 through 13 a new style attribute, and that's going to map to HTML, the HTML attribute of style. So if we save that changes and go back to edit our main menu, what we can now do is add some inline CSS to change the display of this menu tab, which so far as we know isn't the wrong way to change this tab. It's the right way for us because the client just said change the menu tab. So we can change the styling, but that's what it's limited to right here in this example. But we could add more attributes, maybe add data attributes or inline JavaScript if we wanted to. I'd not recommend that. But now our second tab, we've altered the title using core. And we've altered the display using a module. So we've extended Drupal so that we can have more changes available. Now, of course, adding CSS that way or making those changes, we could probably do it with the markup itself and change the markup directly. This is where TWIG comes into play. So TWIG is the new templating engine for Drupal 8. It replaces PHP engine, and it helps for having a separation between backend code and front-end code. Now, what's great about Drupal 8, and I'm sure you've seen this because it's been backported to Drupal 7, in your development environments, you can turn on a debug variable in your services.yaml file that prints out these HTML comments to tell you everything you need to know about theming of your Drupal 8 site. So if we look at this one on line 7, Drupal is telling us exactly which template is being used for the main menu. It's in the classy theme, templates, navigation, menu.html.twig. And it tells us on lines 3 through 5 which twig file is being used. On line 5, it's denoted with an X, menu.html.twig. But it's also going to tell us what twig file we can use to overwrite that and customize it and use our skills to change it. So menu main.html.twig. So we're probably using a custom theme, as unless you're running a really basic Drupal site, you probably have a custom theme, and we have one in this example called Flex Theme. So we create that template file, menu main.html.twig. We copy the classy file, and we can make alterations to Twig. And Twig is great because it has conditional logic. We can set attributes and variables, and then use functions to print items out. So we can do a loop. On line 4, it's looping through all the items in the main menu. And on line 7, we can say, hey, is the title currently set to the word twig? If so, we're going to build a string on line 8 of inline CSS, because I love inline CSS. And then we're going to use the link function on line 9 to add alt to the title and add that style as a URL option. Otherwise, if it's not twig, we'll just print the link function the way it would. So this allows us so that when Drupal goes to render the page and render the main menu, it's going to see that we have a twig file that's named to take precedence, and it's going to use our twig file, which gets rendered to the page, using that altered logic, which changes the menu tab to be twig alt with a green background. So we've used our front-end skills, not really much Drupal stuff yet, so that we can just write HTML or a little bit of Twig to change the menu the way that works for the client. We can change a whole lot more in Twig than we could just with a module or with just CSS, because so far I've been using inline CSS, which probably isn't that great. So we want to take our CSS out and put it in a CSS file. Obviously, a limitation of CSS for altering stuff and making Drupal do what you want is that it can only affect styling. Now, in previous versions of Drupal, if you wrote custom CSS, the way you would include it was probably with like Drupal add CSS, that function. That doesn't exist in Drupal 8 anymore for good reasons. So we need to create what's known as a library. So in our Drupal theme, we're going to create a CSS file called menualter.css, and we're going to create our libraries.yaml file, namespace by our theme. So flextheme.libraries.yaml. Now our CSS for this example is going to be very basic, but we could change a whole lot of styling. With CSS, you can even change text to some degree. But we're gonna target the 5th item in the menu tab. Actually, I think that's supposed to be the 4th item in the menu tab. We'll set the background and text color. Now the way we apply the CSS to the page, there's multiple ways to, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The way we add the CSS to a library is in our libraries.yaml file, we create what's known as the library asset name. So on line 1, we're calling it menu alter. And this has to be a name that is unique within the construct of our theme or our module, because libraries can be created in modules. We're going to define on line 3 that we have CSS in this library, and on line 5, the path relative to our theme for the CSS file. So CSS/menualter.css. Now the way you include a library in Drupal 8, there are many different ways to do it. One of the ways with a theme is we can add it as an attribute to our info.yaml file and say, anytime this theme is used, include this library. And it doesn't even have to be libraries in our theme. We can just call other libraries as well. But here on line 8, we define libraries, and on line 9, we pass it the name of our flex theme menu alter library. So what's going to happen? Drupal renders the page using our theme, gets the theme definition, sees that it relies on a library, gets the definition of that library from libraries.yaml, reads libraries.yaml, sees that it includes a CSS file, finds the location of that CSS, adds it to the page, page renders, CSS targets that 4th item, and it changes the background color to blue and the text color to white. So we've used the library in our theme with just some, really just some basic CSS to alter a menu item, and that's a perfectly valid way to do it. Now, if we wanted to get still not deep into Drupal, but we wanted to do more than just change the styling, there's always JavaScript. And again, JavaScript is a perfectly valid way to change things in Drupal and to make Drupal do what you want. Again, it's going to be added with a library the way CSS is. So what we're going to do is create another library that's going to include some CSS and JavaScript. So we write a JavaScript file and a CSS file. Now, in our JavaScript file, we're going to write a Drupal behavior. Who here is familiar with Drupal behaviors? All right, about 60% of the room. So behavior, who here is familiar with jQuery? All right, even more people. So in jQuery, you have document.ready events that trigger after like the DOM finishes loading. Drupal behaviors are pretty much the same thing. They've been around in Drupal for a long time. So when the DOM finishes loading or it changes, like for an AJAX event, then behaviors get run. So we're going to write a behavior that will target with JavaScript on line 5, the main menu links, loop through them, and if it points to node 5, then we're going to add a class called yellow menu, which will add our custom CSS. We'll add some more inline styling because I like it on line 8 to set background or the text color. We're going to change the target to point to an empty window, and then we're going to add the word alt to the end on line 10, making sure that word is translated because we like translations. Again, this library includes some basic CSS, so I'll just show you. Yellow menu, change the background color to yellow. Now, libraries.yaml in our theme. Libraries is a plural word, which means it can contain multiple libraries. So we define a new library called menu alter main on line 6. We list our CSS file, lines 8 through 10. Now we're going to also tell Drupal that this library includes a JavaScript file on line 11 and 12. So we include the path to our JavaScript. And what's really cool about libraries is modules can have dependencies on other modules in Drupal. I'm sure you've seen that. Libraries can have dependencies on other libraries. And this is important because in Drupal 8, Drupal will only include the JavaScript and CSS on a page that you tell it to. Previous versions of Drupal would pretty much include all the JavaScript defined for active modules on every page. It was very non-performant. So anytime you write custom JavaScript with a library and you're going to use, say, jQuery or other core JavaScript functionality, you have to make sure you include that library yourself so Drupal knows to add it to the page. So we're going to add dependencies on the jQuery library, jQuery once, and the core Drupal JavaScript library. So we know when this library gets added to a page, these libraries will get added as well. We can account on that functionality. Now, another way you can add a library to a page before we added it to our YAML, info.yaml file for our theme, that's going to be included everywhere. Maybe we don't want this everywhere. Maybe we only want it in certain instances. So we go back to our menu main.html.twig that we created in a previous example. And on line 1, we can call the twig function attach library. And this will allow us to include a library anytime this template file is used. So we pass the name of our library, flex theme menu alter main. So that JavaScript and that CSS will only be included when this template is included on the page. So now what happens? Our page loads. Drupal calls our twig file. Our twig file says, hey, Drupal, include this library. Drupal finds the library definition, finds the location of the CSS and the JavaScript and the other libraries we want included on the page. Includes all that JavaScript. Page loads. Our Drupal behavior runs, loops through all the menu items, finds the one that points to node 5, adds a class, changes the title, changes the location it points to. Again, JavaScript alter.
Question.
Yes.
Why did you include it in the twig file?
So why did I include the library in the twig file? I included it in the twig file just for this example to show you that
it's possible.
It's possible.
Okay.
So if you had like a certain markup in a specific twig file of your theme, and you want a JavaScript to act with just that, you can include it here instead of having to write a hook or anything.
And in that case, you wouldn't need it in the info YAML.
Right. Info YAML would be included every time. Say you just wanted, if this twig file was only included on certain pages for certain elements, and you wanted that library included with it.
Yeah. So you wouldn't need to do the libraries in the info file if you did it here.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry if that was confusing, but yeah, the previous.
Yeah.
Now, so that's JavaScript. Let's get into a little more Drupal heavier functionality. I'm sure most people are aware of hooks. They've been around for a while in Drupal, and they're still around in Drupal 8. Still a valid way to change server-side functionality or interact with functionality on a server side before being templated. There are lots of hooks available, and it can be hard to determine which one to use. Again, we go to our debug information that we can turn on with TWIG, with TWIG. And one of the other options it tells us is on line 2, the theme hook. So it gives us a suggestion of if you want to alter anything that's going to be themed with this markup, here's the name of the hook to apply. So now hooks can be added in a theme, but they can also be added in modules, so that's the most likely place you're going to find them. So we're going to have a custom module called Flex Module to include our hooks. Now an interesting thing with Drupal 8 in module building, previous versions of Drupal you always needed a .module file, or you pretty much always needed a .module file. Drupal 8 you don't need .module. If you see a module in Drupal 8 that has a .module file, it probably just contains hooks in it. So if you don't have any hooks, you don't need a .module file. It's really cool if you're going to write some more advanced things that we'll see later. So we have our module file, and we're going to define a preprocess hook, passing the name of the hook the theme told us, so menu -- main at the end for our preprocess hook. And preprocess will run before sending items to be templated. So what we're going to do is on line 4, we run through all the items in this menu. We get the URL that it's pointing to on line 6. If it points to node 6, then on line 8 we'll add alt to the end of the text. We'll get the current URL attributes, and we'll add some inline CSS to it just to show it. And then on line 14, we'll rebuild the URL or add the options to the URL. So what we have to do is enable our module, and you can use a number of tools to enable modules, from Drupal core to Composer to good old Drush or console. So I'll just enable it with Drush. So once the module is loaded, what happens now? This page goes to get rendered. Drupal gets the information about the main menu, sends it to be processed before being templated, hits our preprocess, we alter the markup, sends that to our custom template where it renders it, and we see this hook's alter on the page. So we've used a hook to interact with functionality before it gets served by another service. Now in Drupal 8, we can do something way cooler than hooks. And it's known as the services. And services are basically, they're the core functionality of Drupal. Almost everything in Drupal 8, not everything, but a lot of functionality is built out in services or controllers. Think of like database, how that's handled, how entities are handled, how menus are handled. There's a menu service, there's an entity service, there's a database service, there's an email service. All those core pieces of Drupal, where in previous versions of Drupal, to change them, you'd have to hack core. And that is the one wrong way to do anything in Drupal, is hack core. But in Drupal 8, you can create or replace services to change the way the core functionality of Drupal works without breaking Drupal. So to do this, you need a module. There's no way that I know of to write services without adding it to a module. And you're going to need potentially 2 files. A services provider.php, namespace by your module. So we have flex module service provider. And then a PHP file to contain your PHP class. And this is going to get a little dev heavy with PHP, so I apologize. But it's pretty simple to, in your service provider class, which extends the core service, so we're taking that class Drupal provides and we're going to add to it. We're going to what's known as override the alter function, which is a method in that class. And we can say, hey, Drupal, on line 12, get me the definition of the service that controls building menus. And instead, I'm going to tell you to use this class for that service. And that's our custom class that we have. So on line 13, we're saying, Drupal, anytime someone wants to use the menu link tree service, use our custom code instead of yours. Now this can be dangerous because we have to make sure we include all the functionality that any module is going to account for with that service. When we overrode the template in the TWIG example, we just copied what was in Classy from that core template and made changes. We don't necessarily want to do that with a service because that's a lot of overhead. So what we can do is we can extend the core service. So in our class, we extend menu link tree from Drupal core, which means Drupal will use everything defined in that class unless we override it. So on line 6, we're going to override the build method, which Drupal uses to build the menu. We're going to call on line 7 the core service to build the menu as it would. And then this is pretty much like we would do in a hook. Is on line 8, we're going to check if we're building the main menu. Then we're going to loop through all the menu items, find the one that is the 8th item, add alt to the title, and add some inline CSS again. This is a very overly complicated way to change a menu tab, but it's just to show an example that we can hook into, hook is a wrong word for this, but we can alter the core functionality of Drupal so that we can put our custom logic in. And this is very specific custom logic, but say we wanted to change database connections or how file entities are handled or how entities are even built. We can change that. So what happens now on our menu, Drupal goes to build the main menu for the page. It actually calls our service to handle that. Our service calls the core service to then get all the menu links, calls our method to build those menu links with our custom logic. That gets sent to pre-processing, that gets sent to templating, output on the page, and we see services alt changed because we changed the core service.
Sorry.
Yes.
I have another question. Alter is not as good as the second way you showed. Is that correct? Like if you use alter to alter the service,
yeah,
or if you use extends to extend the service and create sort of a child class of the service.
Yep.
So are they equal in value? Or
yeah, let me clarify. So both cases that I showed with defining a service, we're extending core services, but the way you tell Drupal about a new service is by overriding the altered method in that class. So basically, the service provider base has a alter class, alter method in it, and we're just making our own instance of that to be able to change another service. And so here we're still
you need to do both of those things.
Yeah. So if you want to define a class, a new service, you have to do this.
Yeah.
Or if you want to replace an existing service, I'm just doing this because I want to change an existing service, and I don't want to rewrite everything. But that's a good point. Is I've just showed 7 ways to change menu tabs using 7 different methods. You didn't have to follow along with all the code that I did this. I know some of it might have been, if you're not familiar with the Drupal 8 concepts, a little advanced. But it's that using different skill sets from core PHP, like advanced PHP, OOP programming, to knowing TWIG, to just writing CSS, you can change menu tabs the same exact way. You get the same output that meets the client's needs. So when the client comes along and says, can you change menu things on the home page, you can abstract that to yourself to them asking you, can you make Drupal 8 do X, Y, and Z? No matter what that case is, you know your answer can be, yes, I can do that. I have the skills to do that. I may not be Dries. I may not know everything about Drupal, but I know enough where I can use the skills I have available or the team I have available to make those changes. Now you want to say, I need more details, because you just don't want them to tell you, I need to change the menu thingies. You want to know how they want it to be changed. The more details you receive, the better you can determine which skills to use to change things in Drupal 8. How am I doing? I think I'm all right time. So what did we learn? Hopefully, this showed you that Drupal can do that. If you can change a menu tab using CSS, TWIG, JavaScript, hooks, services, modules, Drupal core, if you can change menus that way, just think of anything else in Drupal that's way more complex, has many more different ways you can change it. So there's always a way you can use the skills you have to make Drupal do what you want. And there's no such thing as the right way to make this change. You don't have to find out what's the right way for me to do this. It's what's the right way for you to do it, to solve your needs and your time and your budget and your skills. All right, so that's what I have for this. I took out some stuff just for time, but if you want to know more, I have this presentation available. I hope you can read these links. I will post these online after this talk. At bit.ly DCN17Flex is an annotated version of this presentation. DCN17Flex slides are these slides annotated on SlideShare. DCN17Flex code is all the code I wrote for those examples, the theme and the module. They were written for 8.1.3, but they should still work. Annotated code, hopefully it follows all the coding standards. if you liked my little brain diagram at the beginning, I have a link to that, Drupal Brain, and then my podcast, again, if you're interested. So that I can make this session do what I need it to do for the audience. I greatly appreciate feedback. So if you have any, let me know afterwards. Constructive criticism is also welcome. That's fine with me. Or talk to me afterwards. With that, I'll say thank you and open it up to questions if there are any, putting back up resources. And if there are no questions, you can just clap for me. That's fine. Wow, I did so great. All right.
Well, yeah, I would just say you were talking about how to pick a way to do something. One of the most important questions I've ever asked a client is why. So they say, I want to change the menu thingy. Why? And it's not like, why? It's like, why? What is it? What are you trying to accomplish? What is it not currently doing for you? And if you get the story behind it, then you can figure out that, oh, just injecting some CSS isn't going to work. We need something that's sustainable for the next 6 months or something like that.
I'm not ignoring your question. I'm just taking a selfie. But no, that's an important point. The better you understand the problems you're trying to solve, the more, what's the right way to it? The better you can solve those problems. That's like asking those why questions is 100% true that you need to do that. That's actually a topic of one of the podcast episodes is how to ask for more details. But yeah, that's very valid. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to make assumptions and you're going to solve the wrong problems, and then the client's going to be like, you didn't do this for me. I'm going to sue you or whatever, not pay you. Hopefully just not pay you. Thank you for pointing that out. That's a good thing to remember to do. All right, cool. We can just stand here in awkward silence.
What did you not have time to show us?
So actually, the last method I have is I combine all 7 versions all 7 examples into one and use every single one. It just takes too long to go through in a 30-minute session. So, but the code's there. So if you want to see how to use it,
you change a core class to add a new hook to add use JavaScript to.
Yeah, what it does is in the service I add, I change the title in the service. In the hook, I add a new attribute. In the TWIG template, I'm checking for an attribute. And if it has it, I add a class. In a JavaScript behavior, I add, I think, a crazy CSS class that makes it a rainbow background color. Then I use a TWIG filter to flip the text to be backwards. And I use the custom the module to add a new attribute, so you can say it's a combo item. It's this ridiculous way to use 7 different skill sets, but it's just to prove that you can do all these different things.
That's what we get when we get legacy code.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I should call it legacy. That's what I should call it instead of combo. I have previous versions of this talk. If you're interested in seeing that crazy way, it's up online on my website, or you can find it somehow on YouTube. And if you want to see me going through all the combos, it's
what's your favorite method to use this?
My favorite method. I'll give a candid answer. My favorite method is the way that allows me to solve the problem to meet the client's needs in the time and budget. But as a developer, I like the ability to alter the services, which is really cool. It's very overkill, but it's just to know that if Drupal's not working the way I want it to, I can be like, I'm going to make you do what I want, and I'm not going to break my upgrade path. Or potentially I could. But so I like writing services, and it's just a new concept thanks to the Symfony framework, which is really cool. I'm not so keen on writing JavaScript and CSS just because it's not my foray. But
well, yeah, I guess if you do the modification to PHP, you're also protecting it from the themer.
Yes.
Some inadvertent change down the road that breaks everything.
And that's a value I forgot to mention about TWIG, is since you can't put PHP in TWIG, we no longer have what I like to call the little Bobby tables issue, which is you can't put PHP in a TWIG file that would erase your database. You can't do that. So it separates server-side logic from front-end logic, but you still have functions, or basic functions and variables and operators in TWIG, so you can do a lot without messing with the server-side code. It's really cool. So Twig is also, I'd say Twig and services are my two favorite. Cool. Awesome. You can clap again. Yeah.
Thank you.